Hi, good morning again. Today is a beautiful Sunday, and I believe that God has something special for us from His Word. And so, for you who are listening out there, I am believing that the Lord will bless you. For those who are not feeling well, I would say the Lord's power of healing will be upon you. And for those who are struggling with some of the needs, I know that the Lord will be your provision this morning. My message this morning about Caleb taking the hill country. And my text is found in Joshua 14:6 to 15. Let me read the text. Then the people of Judah came to Joshua at Gilgal, and Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, said to him, "You know what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God in Kadesh Barnea, concerning you and me. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land, and I brought him word again, as it was in my heart. But my brothers who went up with me made the heart of the people melt. Yet I wholly followed the Lord my God." And Moses swore on that day, saying, "Surely the land on which your foot has trodden shall be an inheritance for you and your children forever, because you have wholly followed the Lord my God. And now, behold, the Lord has kept me alive, just as he said, these 45 years since the time that the Lord spoke this word to Moses, while Israel walked in the wilderness. And now, behold, I am this day 85 years old. I am still as strong today as I was in the day that Moses sent me, and my strength now is as my strength was then. For war and for going and for coming. So now, give me this hill country of which the Lord spoke on that day. For you heard on that day how the Anakim were there, with great fortified cities. It may be that the Lord will be with me, and I shall drive them out just as the Lord said." Then Joshua blessed him, and he gave Hebron to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, for an inheritance. Therefore, Hebron became the inheritance of Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, to this day, because he wholly followed the Lord, the God of Israel. Now, the name of Hebron formerly was Kiriath Arba. Arba was the greatest man among the Anakim, and the land had rest from war. Now, the text we are looking at is about Caleb asking Joshua's permission for him to take the hill countries of southern Canaan. Caleb saw and was concerned that the hill countries, a sizable part of the land that God promised to give to Abraham's descendants, were still remain untouched. The Israelites have not conquered it, and they have not occupied it. Whether he was alarmed by the growing complacency of many Israelites or driven by his own patience, we may never be able to surely tell. But one thing we know is that Caleb is a self-confessed faithful follower of God. And he remembered the Lord's command to Israel. This was what God told Moses while they were still on the plains of Moab. And the Lord said to Moses in the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when you pass over the Jordan into the land of Canaan, then you shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you, and destroy all their figured stones, and destroy all their metal images, and demolish all their high places. And you shall take possession of the land, and settle in it. For I have given the land to you to possess it. You shall inherit the land by lot, according to your clans. To a large tribe you shall give a large inheritance, and to a small tribe you shall give a small inheritance. Wherever the lot falls for any one, that shall be his. According to the tribes of your fathers you shall inherit. But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then those of them whom you let remain shall be as barbs in your eyes, and thorns in your sides, and they shall trouble you in the land where you dwell. And I will do to you as I thought to do to them." Numbers 33:51-56. This command was clear. 1. The command was, "Drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you." Verse 52a. The word "all" indicated that the land now had become the exclusive domain of the Israelites, and that the previous occupants have to be driven out. No original inhabitant shall be allowed to remain. Letting them stay was not acceptable to the Lord. Then, second thing, letter B, it says, "Destroy all their figured stones, and destroy all their metal images, and demolish all their high places." Verse 52b. God's strict order was destroy and demolish. Destroy and demolish any religious figure and symbol that distracted the Israelites from worshiping their one and only true God who appeared to their forefathers. The awesome God who appeared to Moses in the burning bush and commanded him to lead the Israelites out of the land of bondage and into the land of freedom. The one and only awesome God who led them in the wilderness and guided them safely into the promised land. Number 3, the command was to take possession of the land and settle in it. That is verse 53a. This only meant one thing: exercise control and righteous governance of the land. Every inch of that land should come under the government of the Lord Most High. And D, the command came with a serious warning. But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, Then those of them whom you let remain shall be as barbs in your eyes and thorns in your sides, and they shall trouble you in the land where you are or where you dwell, and I will do it to you as I thought to do to them. Verse 54. Caleb understood the significance of this command and the ramifications of Israel's failure to fully occupy the land of their inheritance. He knew that leaving the hill countries unconquered, unsettled by the Israelites, and outside the control of Israel was only partial obedience to the Lord's command. It was only a partial victory for Israel and was not completely pleasing to God. Until Israel has fully conquered and occupied the land, there is still much work to do. Caleb also knew that it would not be good for Israel. The day will come when the Israelites will be called upon to pay for their complacency and short-sightedness. The inhabitants they allow to survive will be their source of continuing trouble and pain. The description was barb in their eyes and thorns in their side. Numbers 33:51 to 56 is a rather harsh command if we forget the fact that God has given these kingdoms to amend their way so much time, but they kept piling up their sin until their cup of iniquity had run full. There is a time in a people's life where redemption is simply beyond reach. So Caleb, ever the warrior that he was, and a faithful follower of God, took this as a personal challenge. He and the tribe of Judah sought an audience with Joshua to seek permission for them to take the hill country, and the rest is history. Now, Joshua and Caleb were standouts in Israel. They were young men, probably in their late 30s, when Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt on that fateful night of their miraculous deliverance and departure from the land of bondage. They have been longtime friends. As to from when, nobody can really tell. Maybe in the wilderness, when they both served as assistants of Moses, or way back then in Egypt, when they were working as brick workers. Nevertheless, it appears that a strong friendship may have been forged between them as they helped Moses lead and minister to the estimated 3 million Israelites in the 40-year journey in the desert. This friendship lasted up to their ripe old age in the Promised Land. Up to their dying days, they remained as good and faithful friends, and above all, as faithful servants of God. Their names first appear in Numbers 13:6 and 16, and Numbers 14:6 to 9. In these scriptures, they are immediately shown as standouts. This was the occasion when the Israelites have reached Kadesh Barnea, a border town across the Promised Land. It normally took Egyptian traders some 2 to 3 weeks' time to travel the distance between Egypt and Canaan, but it may have taken the Israelites much longer, considering their pregnant women, nursing mothers, infants, and young children, domestic animals, and belongings. For Joshua and Caleb, Kadesh Barnea was a landmark. It was there where the two showed themselves to be young men of outstanding character and traits. They showed themselves as God-fearing men, men of faith and confidence in God, and men of courage. God said of Caleb, "But my servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit and has followed me fully, I will bring him into the land into which he went, and his descendants shall possess it." Numbers 14:24. Joshua and Caleb were defined much differently from the rest of the Israelites. The rest of the Israelites were unbelieving, disobedient, and rebellious. It was there where their hearts, or where the hearts of the Israelites were exposed as more inclined to the pleasures and ways of Egypt than to the ways of their covenant-keeping God. It was there where the generation of Israelites became the object of God's wrath and judgment and was barred from entering the Promised Land. In his wrath, God consigned them to 40 years of aimless wandering in the wilderness and to perish there with all kinds of diseases and sicknesses. They were buried there in the sand dunes of the vast desert to be remembered no more. The unfortunate thing that happened here was that the people that God has chosen to be His most treasured possession, the people destined to inherit the land of promise, lost their faith and confidence in God. While the promised land was visible to their natural eyes, the eyes of their faiths, or the eyes of their hearts, were blinded by the spirit of unbelief, of fear, and disobedience. Their hearts melted and lost the ability to function in faith and in obedience. But while the rest of the Israelites were losing their vision of a great promise and an exhilarating sense of mission, Joshua and Caleb were clear-eyed about their life's mission and the exciting days that awaited them in the land of their inheritance. Risking their own lives and standing, Joshua and Caleb stood with Moses and exhorted the people not to disobey the Lord. Even in their youth, the two exhibited outstanding traits that their peers, even the more mature among them, were sorely lacking. They were God-fearing, courageous, and confident in the power and promises of their God. They were men of firm religious convictions. They were men of faith and action who took God at His word. When Moses passed on, the awesome task of leading Israel into the promised land fell on the shoulders of Joshua, his closest confidant and apprentice. Under the godly and able leadership of Joshua, the Israelites were able to successfully cross the Jordan River and enter the promised land. They successfully conquered the cities of Jericho and Ai. They easily defeated their enemies in the Low Countries and drove them out. They were winning in every front and were taking the land as the Lord has promised. And Joshua was already beginning to allocate to some of the tribes of Israel the land of their inheritance. But the highlands were proving to be more difficult to take. Their cities were better fortified, and the descendants of Anak were able to establish good defensive positions there. You will remember that Anak was a giant and a feared and vicious warrior, and his descendants carried his identity and reputation. And the reputation may have discouraged many Israelites from pursuing their enemies in the hill country. So out of his strong sense of duty to God and his burning sense of mission, he approached Joshua for permission to take the hill country. People who are driven by a strong sense of duty to God will take personal initiatives to advance the work of the Lord. There were many able-bodied men in Israel who could do the work, but they did not feel the urgency of doing it. Caleb was different. He is being described as someone of a different spirit. How I wish there were more men and women of our time who are of Caleb's spirit. I do not know how many God-believing men and women who have walked the face of the earth lived like Caleb. I wish I could proudly count myself among them, but my conscience tells me I am barely making the grades. He belonged to a different kind, and his life story taught me some important and practical lessons in life. One, I learned that consistency is important in our Christian life, and that consistency should be found in what we say and do. Secondly, the lesson of conquering and taking control of every domain God has given to us. Now, look about consistency. Caleb was a consistent believer in God, and he showed it in his words and action. He was not a charlatan. A charlatan is someone who pretends to know much, but in actuality knows very little. He says much, but his words show very little content of significance. In other words, a charlatan's words are empty talk and cannot be relied upon or taken seriously. In every case, a charlatan is a fake. But Caleb was never like that. The fact is that he spoke very little. He spoke only when there was a pressing need to do so. But the words that he spoke said much. There was a ring of divine truth, knowledge, and wisdom every time he spoke. Not only did Caleb speak with so much sincerity, he spoke with integrity. He did not fake himself. He was a consistent person. The dictionary defines consistent as reliable, steady, acting or done in the same way over time, especially so as to be fair or accurate. A consistent person is someone who is reliable or can be trusted upon. He is steady and does not easily change his mind like the weather. A consistent man shows a good track record of these things. He is fair and accurate. He speaks with integrity. He does not play with words and does not downplay the truth. His actions are consistent with generally accepted standards of conduct. A consistent person is a faithful and reliable person. He conducts himself according to established rules over and over again. Caleb was that kind of a person. For 40 days, he went with the other spies to reconnoiter the land that God had promised to give them. While the others, upon their return, gave the people a bad or discouraging report, he and Joshua gave a very encouraging one. He gave Moses and the people a report seen from the eyes of faith and great confidence in God, as all believers in God are under obligation to do. Since the departure from Egypt, the Israelites were to live by faith in the God of their salvation. Caleb lived as a consistent believer in God. Consistency in what we say or do is very crucial to our credibility. A Christian credibility or lack of it could affect his professional life, his business life, his family life, his political life, and relationship with others and other Christians. Consistency affects our credibility as a church in a given neighborhood. When our verbal testimonies are consistent with the life we live, we will attain a high level of credibility among our neighbors. I remember a story of someone trying to win his neighbor to the Lord. When the neighbor said, "Your actions speak so loud that I can't hear what you say. It is unfortunate that I have to say that some Christians are not consistent. They don't keep promises. They don't pay their debts. They are not consistently faithful to God. They look saintly on Sundays but live sinfully during the week. They are not promise keepers." Now, the second thing that we see here, that we need to conquer and take control of every domain that God has entrusted to us. For example, we need to take control of our mind. We need to take control of our thoughts. We need to take control of our feelings and our affections. This is the second most important lesson we can take from Joshua's life. The aggressiveness and fighting spirit of the Israelites was apparently waning, and it seemed like they have become comfortable with the idea of peaceful coexistence with the giants of the hill country. Caleb set us the supreme example that this should not be the case. Our internal life must be totally rid of its internal enemies like doubts, pride, selfishness, disobedience, spiritual indolence, unbelief, love for the world and the pleasures in it, love for money, love for the applause of men rather than God, and many other things. Jesus, living in us, cannot and will not live in peaceful coexistence with sin and evil. Our internal life needs to get cleaned up through the sanctifying ministry of the Word and the empowering presence of the Holy Spirit. Caleb showed us the attitude that no evil should be tolerated in our God-given life and God-given sphere of government. In times like this, we need to have more men and women of Caleb's caliber. Reliable, steady, courageous, consistently Christian in what they see and do. May their number increase and increase fast and soon. The church in our times is being assailed from within and without. Low-level spirituality, spiritual stagnation, and widespread immaturity is weakening it and making it no match to the challenges it is called upon to face. Add to these things the problem of internal strife and factionalism. That is why our hearts melt merely at the news of a possible confrontation with the giants of our time. Externally, we are also being assailed by evil forces emanating from demonic strongholds, trying to steal our children from us through a godless educational system, and state policies trying to steal our freedom to worship wherever and whenever we could and like. We need a Caleb who is willing to risk popular standing and friendship to speak the truth. We need a Caleb who will not settle for a peaceful coexistence with the enemy in God's declared territory. If the enemy is still strongly holding out in your thoughts and affections, you need to declare an all-out war against the devil and against these evils. We need to declare divine victory over every inch of our life. I challenge you, my brothers, let the Holy Spirit move in your life and think about these things. Destroy every stronghold in your mind and in your heart. Destroy every bad habit. Destroy the strongholds of the enemy that is trying to limit your family from effectively following the Lord. I'll keep praying for you. I'll welcome your comments and prayer requests. You sent it to me. God is in control, and He will give you the victory that you need. Well, that's all for now, and I want to thank my good friends in Bukidnon, Pete Bunyil there, my good friends in Agusan, my good friends in Cebu, my good friends in Cagayan de Oro. God bless you. We'll see you next Sunday. Again, the Lord's smile be upon you. God bless.